Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rising Stories Podcast. I'm Corine Sandifer, your host. A few years ago, I decided to devote my time to empowering women. And since then, I have helped women build their businesses. I started a Lean In Network chapter in Nashville, Tennessee. I met Sheryl Sandberg in California and started this podcast. On Rising Stories, you are going to find women who are changing their lives and who are rising in their stories. It's going to be two women talking about how they got their start in business, and we talk about best business practices. You'll also hear great advice for anyone wanting to move forward in any stage in life. We talk about productivity tips, our favorite apps, and things that we find that are good and wise. Sometimes they're on Amazon and sometimes not. If you are someone who needs some encouragement to launch your dream in your business, or if you just love hearing stories from fascinating women, then this is the podcast for you. Have you ever wondered if you can afford to be a stay-at-home mom? My guest today is Erin Odom, and she has written a book about doing just that. It's called You Can Stay Home with Your Kids, 100 Tips, Tricks, and Ways to Make It Work on a Budget. She is my girl. I love this topic to death because I was a stay-at-home mom, and I like to think that I was a bit frugal as well. So I have some fun tips as well, and we just had a great conversation. Erin is a blogger and an amazing stay-at-home mom, and our conversation brought us to setting aside your fears and sharing those hard times with others. That's what really makes a difference sometimes. We also talk about designated work hours. I'm telling you, this is going to knock your socks off, so you don't want to miss this episode. Erin is such an open and giving person, and I felt so empowered just by our conversation alone, and I know you will too. But before we go on, I want to stop today and ask for your help. I believe Rising Stories podcast is in a bit of a crossroads and needing to make a change. But I want to hear from you on this. What are you wanting to hear more of? Is it more business women who are running companies? More authors? Do you love my Friday favorites? Or is it more coaching from me or something totally different? I would love to hear from you. I want that more than anything, so much that I am doing an Amazon giveaway. It will be in a form of a gift card. So I would love to hear thoughts from you. And to enter to win, you complete the Google form that I am going to link below in the show notes. If you cannot see the description box below, or you are listening on a different app, head over to my website at corinesandifer.com to access the link on this show notes. Also, my link will be on Instagram. I will post it on Facebook, on my groups, on my page, which is Corine Sandifer, Rising Stories Podcast on Facebook. And of course, all restrictions apply according to state and federal laws for this giveaway. And now here is my conversation with Erin Odom. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Corine. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on Rising Stories.
Thanks so much for having me.
I love your website. I think it's like eye candy to me because there's so many things. I was looking at it today again, and I was like, which one am I going to click on? But the one thing that caught my eye was the staying at home with your kids when you can barely afford it. What a great title, and I can't wait to dig into that article. It was cool.
I am excited to share that message with the world because that has been my life.
Yeah. How long have you been, so you have kids, and how old are your kids now? Are they grown or?
My kids are almost 10, 7, 5.5, and our surprise is 12 months old.
12 months old. Wow.
Yes. So we have a baby. We have 3 little girls that all were born within 4 years, and then we have a baby. And I would consider myself a work-at-home mom, but I've been able to achieve my dream of staying at home with my kids by learning how to create more income from home.
Now, what did you start doing? When did you start doing that?
So I started staying home when our daughter was about 13 or 14 months old, our oldest daughter, the one that's almost 10. And at the time, our family, we didn't really realize how much it took to support a family. We were a little naive on that. And so we decided to try to make it work on my husband's teacher income, which in North Carolina, teachers do not get paid very much at all, even teachers with master's degree like my husband. And we were basically in the middle and then in the aftermath of the recession living on a low income. And we really didn't even realize we had an income problem at first. So I really wanted to stay at home. We wanted to make that work. So I learned how to cut corners, curb spending, and create more income from home.
I think that people don't realize that you can really do a lot from home. And I think you can cut a lot of corners. I think when most people think about, coming home and working from home or, working at home rather than a 9 to 5, it's scary, right? Because they don't know, like, how is this going to work?
Absolutely. It's really scary knowing whether or not the money's going to be there. And also just staying at home with your kids is a whole new challenge. Just being with your kids 24/7 and not having that creative outlet that maybe some women have with work. But there's definitely ways to have that at home with your kids as well.
Yeah. And what was the first thing that you did to make money?
So, Corine, I tried everything. I thought, okay, I thought I could learn how to bake goods and sell them. Well, I never ended up doing that, but that's something that I thought I could do. Or maybe I could learn how to sew and open an Etsy shop. But I quickly discovered that I needed to really hone in on where were my gifts and what was I already good at and focus there to learn how to create income out of those, something that was just the natural overflow of who I was and how God had made me. So I first started tutoring at our local public school. So I actually did leave home for that, but it was just a few hours a week. And I was able to make some good income per hour there and teaching some homeschool kids Spanish. But the first thing that I did solely at home was writing for several local newspapers. I freelanced for them, and it was such a natural fit. I have a degree in journalism, and so I had majored in that in school. I had written for newspapers in the past, and I was able to be a freelancer for those newspapers and do it when my child was napping or at night when she was asleep. So it was just a perfect fit for me. And I was able to communicate with my editor via email. I was able to conduct the majority of the interviews by phone.
Once that happened and you knew exactly what you wanted to do, what did you do to maybe, you were already a journalism major, but what did you do to expand on that? On your writing?
So really, one thing that I did was I had to put aside fear and network. And what I mean, I had to go way back, or it felt way back, to about 6 years previous and tap into some contacts that I had known back in my newspaper writing days. And that was really scary, Corine. And I think about moms that might be listening right now who are very business savvy because they're listening to your podcast. So obviously they're interested in business and being an entrepreneur, whether they work outside of the home or inside the home. Or maybe they just have that dream. And maybe they're scared to tap into those old contacts because they've been out of the workforce for a while. So what I would say is the worst that somebody can say is no. And what I had to do was I looked up the name of a previous editor, and I knew that he had previously worked at a newspaper about 30 minutes away from where we were living. And I looked him up, and lo and behold, he actually was in a community 10 minutes down the road from where we had moved. And so I really thought I was putting myself out there. I was really embarrassed because after I got married, I really stopped writing. I put my journalism degree aside. I actually started teaching in public school at that point. And so my journalism hat was really dusty. I hadn't done it in a long time. And I was embarrassed to write the editor. And I was afraid he was going to say, well, first of all, he had offered me a position that I had turned down. I had worked for him for the summer and he offered me a permanent job. I said, no, I'm going to Costa Rica for a year. And then he never heard from me again. So I was embarrassed about that. I was embarrassed because I hadn't written in so long, but I put my pride aside and I wrote him. And I said, do you need any freelancers? And he wrote me back almost immediately and said yes, and said, let's meet. So I think back to that time and I think, what would have happened if I had never written that editor?
Yeah. And it's so simple, right? But yet, like you said, it is very scary, and there's fear and there's apprehension because you're like, oh, he's not going to remember me, or he's going to say no, but that's the worst. Like you said, that's the worst they can do and say. But it's like you went for it. And I think that people don't realize that there's so many opportunities that are there for the asking.
Absolutely. And I would say you don't be afraid to tap into those old contacts and really look back, even go back to your childhood. What are some of those things that made you come alive as a little girl? Were you really into painting or arts and crafts? Were you super organized? There are all kinds of jobs that you can do from home with your gifts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm a business and life coach, and with my life coaching, a lot of people come to me wondering, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? What am I going to do when I grow up? The big question. And I always, just like you just said, I always go back and ask them, what was it in your childhood that you were doing where you lost track of time? You were having so much fun, And I had one person was telling me that she would pack her suitcase and walk around the perimeter of her property and pretend that she was traveling the world. And to this day, she is a missionary with an organization, and she travels and takes people on mission trips. And
that is so awesome.
Isn't that amazing? And I was like, that is her gift. And that's what she wanted to do. And she would talk about going on trips when she was little and, pretend she was going places and packed her little suitcase and pretended she was traveling the world. And now that's what she's doing. And it's so rewarding to see someone working in their element, just what they were meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you continue? How did that writing evolve into now you have a big website and you're helping other moms learn how to stay at home and find that great, opportunity or that great sweet spot for them? Because not everybody's a writer, not everybody's a cook or.
So it's really neat. It goes back to that first newspaper gig that I had from home. I wrote for that newspaper, and it was actually a group of several papers for several years. And after I'd been doing that for a while, I was pregnant with my second daughter, and the editor said, would you be interested in writing a mom column? Let's just write about your pregnancy. Up until then, my specialty had been feature stories. And I loved interviewing people and just telling other people's stories, but I had never told my own. So at that point, I said, that might be fun. I wrote a column about my pregnancy and about having my second child. And then from there, he said, would you be interested in doing this more often? Like, let's turn this into, I think it was a bi-monthly column, maybe twice a month. So I did that for a while. And about when our daughter was about 6 months old, it was really interesting because my editor, around the same week that my best friend and college roommate, they both told me in separate conversations, Erin, you would be really good at blogging. Well, it's really funny. This was 2010 and blogs had existed for quite a while, but I didn't really know that. I didn't realize there was this whole underground community of bloggers, and both of them said there are stay-at-home moms who are making full-time incomes blogging. You really should try it. So I decided that in January of 2011, I was going to start thehumbledhomemaker.com. I called it the Humbled Homemaker because at the time I had been really overwhelmed with homemaking, with motherhood, with life. We were living on a low income. And so I really felt like I had been humbled, not that I was humble, but I had been humbled and God was humbling me. And so I decided to start it. I didn't really tell anyone about it for about 6 months. I just quietly blogged, and a lot of what I was doing was uploading some of those newspaper columns. And then 6 months in, I decided I'm really going to give this a go. And I started networking with some other bloggers, joined a mastermind group, and about a year after I started, about a year and a half when you count when I quietly started, it really took off with a post that I wrote called Staying at Home with Your Kids When You Can Barely Afford It. And that's the one that you referenced.
Yeah.
And that post that I published in October 2012, it became the basis for the book that's now coming out on April 10th called You Can Stay Home with Your Kids.
I love that title.
I do too. And so I will say I didn't come up with that title. The publisher came up with the title, You Can Stay Home with Your Kids, but I love it because I feel like it's so empowering and encouraging. And what's interesting, so I wrote that post in October 2012. Again, it was a vulnerable thing for me because I had been writing on the blog for about 18 months or so. I was very transparent with many parts of my life, but one thing I had never touched on was how we were struggling financially. And part of that original mastermind group I was in, the group of women, we decided to co-write a series on different aspects of motherhood. Now, that small group of about 7 women, they knew we were struggling financially, but they knew my readers didn't know that. And they said, Erin, we think that you would be the one out of all of us to write a post called Staying at Home with Your Kids When You Can Barely Afford It. And so I said I would do it. I committed to it. And it was late at night, the night before the post was supposed to go live. And all of a sudden I remembered, I was supposed to write that post. So I wrote it. And I was floored at the response. The next day, there were thousands of page views, which was really a lot for me back then. And to this day, millions of people have read the post. And it was something that I felt so vulnerable writing because I didn't realize I wasn't alone in my struggles. I wasn't alone at trying to do everything I could to bootstrap my way to stay at home with my kids. And it resonated with so many people because there were millions of women just like me. So many people have written me and have said, I feel like I'm reading my own story and have just felt encouraged like they weren't alone. And I think the way we're able to really build empathy is to share those hard stories.
Tell me about your business and all the ways that you are, I guess, making money, or besides the book. So you've got the 2 books. You've got one coming out in April, and you've got the other one that more than just making it, which is your memoir. Tell me, what else do you have your hands in, and what other things are you doing business-wise to make money?
So the business is the blog, which is several different income streams. I have my own products, which are ebooks and printable packs. And then I have advertising. I have private ad sales. And then I have ad network sales. And then I have affiliate marketing. So I join with other bloggers and entrepreneurs who have products that I think my readers would enjoy. And so I partner with them and I get a cut of that. Those are the main ways that I make money via my blog. And then I have my books, like you said. I previously co-founded a business called ultimatebundles.com, and they curate ebooks and bundle them together. I sold my portion of that back at the end of 2015. So right now, it's the blog and the books.
And that keeps you busy, I'm sure, right? With your family, with the baby.
Absolutely. So it's actually, my husband resigned as a teacher in December 2016. And so the blog has fully supported us for about 14 months now.
Wow. That's amazing. I was going to ask if he was still teaching or if he's come on board. Or I hear a lot of like YouTube people that are doing that, that are, traveling and doing YouTube videos, and how their spouses have like, well, I'll just work for you now because it's making some money. We can just ride this train. So I love that. Do you also have YouTube videos?
I don't really do a lot of video. I have done some Facebook Live, but most of mine is writing. Mm-hmm. I am very interested, like I told you before we started, I'm very interested in starting a podcast, and I'm co-hosting the Cultivating the Lovely show right now. But the podcast is hopefully on the horizon for some point in 2018.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think you'll be a natural. So, Erin, what is the best business advice you've ever gotten?
So the best business advice that I've gotten as a mom, I would say, is to have designated work hours. Mm-hmm. That is something that moms who work from home struggle with a lot. And I will tell you, when my kids were little, when they were babies and toddlers, because I started the Humbled Homemaker when I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. But even before that, I had been working at home. A lot of times I was working just kind of around the clock in the cracks whenever I could fit it in. And it really made me feel like a crazy woman. Because I wasn't ever able to be fully present with my kids, and I wasn't able ever to be fully present with my business. Whenever I was able to hire someone to help me with the kids and then really set some strict office hours, it was a complete game changer for my business. I think that a lot of times moms who are in particular home with their kids, those who aren't might idealize the whole staying at home with your kids and working from home. But really, I think work at home moms, we struggle a lot with that mom guilt because we feel like we're never, fully present. Having those office hours really frees me up to be present with my kids when I'm not working.
That is good advice. Very good advice. I think you're right. You can't really be fully present in either one if you don't have those boundaries. Mm-hmm. Are you a reader? Do you like to read?
I read typically as a busy mom and business owner with 4 kids. I usually read mostly at night before bed on my Kindle Paperwhite, which is just my favorite thing ever, or just in little pockets of the day when I'm nursing the baby or when I'm in car ride or line. But it is my nighttime ritual to get ready for bed and then just read a little bit on my Kindle Paperwhite right before I go to sleep. Mm-hmm.
What's your bedtime? When do you go to bed? Are you early?
Oh, no. I wish I were. I wish I were. But, my aim is 10 o'clock and then read. But more likely it's between 11 and midnight.
Yeah, yeah. And you still read. You still do a little bit of reading.
I do. No matter what time I go to bed, I still read for a few minutes because it's really important to me to get that reading time in. And also, I think my body is just accustomed to this is the signal to get tired and start to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's good. What's the book you're reading right now?
So right now I am reading 2 different books. I like to stick with one book a lot, but sometimes I will have a hard copy that I'll keep downstairs. That's another trick. I have my Kindle by my bed, but then I'll have a hard copy book somewhere downstairs so that if I am sitting there nursing the baby or have a few quiet minutes, I have something nearby that I can grab and read. Mm-hmm. So the hard copy I'm reading right now is called Fierce Faith by Allie Worthington. And it is about overcoming fear, worry, and anxiety. And it's phenomenal. It's really good. I'm just about halfway through that one. And it just came out. And then I'm reading a more medical book. I love to research different health and wellness topics. And it's called What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Pre-Menopause.
Oh, wow. I probably need to read that.
It is really good. So I am 37, and I would say any woman from her 30s on up should definitely read that book. The subtitle to that one is Balance Your Hormones and Your Life from 30 to 50. And it's very insightful, and I'm really enjoying it.
That sounds like a good book. I would like to read that Fierce Faith. That sounds very fascinating. It's great.
They're both very good books that I've enjoyed. And just to tell you a third one that I read it about a month or so ago, Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud.
Yes.
One of the best books I've ever read. I can't believe I waited this long to read it. And it was one of the first ones I read this year. And it's still, I'm still marinating on everything I learned in that book.
That's a great book. And I'm due to read. There are certain books, in this world that they need to be read often, not more than once. And I think that's one of them for me. I think that's a book I'd like to read again and just kind of stay in check, I just recently found a book that I am loving. And I think this book is for anybody who wants to open their mouth, and be it podcasting, be it they're going to do a quick PowerPoint for their work, or wanting to be a speaker, or even just giving a toast at a wedding or something. It is the most fascinating book. It's called Pitch Perfect. I'm trying to remember the name of the author, McGowan, I think. But it is an excellent book on all things speaking, on everything about speaking. Anytime you open your mouth. I probably need to read it over and over again. It's going to be on my list of books that I need to revisit, once every 2 or 3 years. Boundaries is a good one.
Well, I had not heard of that one, but I just wrote it down. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's an excellent book. So do you have a favorite app?
So an app that I love to use for Gmail is called Boomerang. Have you heard of Boomerang?
No.
So Boomerang is really awesome. Basically, there's a free version of it, but it's a little bit more limited. So I do the paid version every year. And when I can pre-schedule emails out for weeks or months, or, even just hours in advance. So let's pretend like I'm writing you at 2:00 in the morning, and I don't want you to get it in your inbox at 2:00 in the morning. I want you to get it in your inbox at 6 or 10 or whatever. Okay. I can write you an email, and I can schedule when it's going to arrive in your inbox. And I can also schedule emails to be sent back to me. So I can reply to someone, and when I like to reply and then forget about it. Mm-hmm. But if I do that and there's an answer I need, I may forget and then never get that answer. And so what I can do is I can schedule Boomerang to bring that message back to me if the person hasn't responded by a certain amount of time.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a great business tip.
It is such a good app for email management. And another way I use it is that if I don't have time for a long response to an email right then, but it's something that I don't need to let get buried in my inbox, I will just Boomerang it back to my inbox. So I'll say, okay, send this back to me in 2 days.
Okay, that's good. And it shows up in your email as a fresh email, unopened?
It does.
Okay. And do you have to do all of it? Is there a desktop version, or can you you have to do all of it via your phone app?
No, they do have one now for your phone, but I just do it on desktop.
Okay.
So I think you can actually have it for your phone, but I've never put Gmail on my phone. You can do it, though, for your phone or on your desktop. It's pretty awesome. And I don't know if it's just for Gmail. I think it is it's just for Gmail, but it is so helpful.
I love that. That's a great tip. Thank you. So besides your Kindle Paperwhite, you were talking about your Kindle. What else are you absolutely loving these days? I always ask my guests things that they are loving. I just love hearing what everyone is doing and using and buying. And
Yes. So something else that I'm loving is my Brilliant Life Planner by Brilliant Business Moms. It is just a really great planner for moms who are also business owners. So I love that. It's a nice hardcover, just nice thick paper and really good encouraging prompts. There's a place for your memories from the week before, a place for things you're grateful for. And so it's really like a keepsake planner. Mm-hmm. And then along with that, I really like the Papermate Flair Felt-tip pens. And medium point, I have the multicolored ones. And so I use those with my planner. And they're really great because they don't bleed through, but they're just really pretty. And I love using all the different bright colors.
And they're made by Paperwhite?
They're made by Papermate.
Papermate. Mm-hmm. And they're just Flair pens. Say that again. It was like Papermate
Flair Felt-tip pens, and I use the medium point, and they're really good to use with planners or just taking notes anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I feel like as moms, as business women, any little thing that we can use to just really brighten our day, and they come in just a lot of fun colors. And I hate it whenever I have like a pen that bleeds through. And knock on wood, but so far the paper I've used these on, they don't bleed through. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because they're the type of pens that are my daughters would love to use because they almost look like markers. And I told them when they came in the mail, I practiced the boundary. I said, these are mommy's pens. You're not allowed to use them. And they have been really good to respect that boundary. It's funny because my son, my 12-month-old, he loves to pick them up and crawl around with them. But they're really fun. And I think that your listeners would really like them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to get me a set. I'm going to buy a set. That sounds really right up my alley. I love paper. I'm one of those, like in school, I loved getting brand new folders and notebooks and papers and just like with my pens. That was me the first day of school, if you can imagine. So I'm all into like stationery and fun things like that. So I'm going to check those out. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so much fun. And thanks for sharing your story about working and making it, being a stay-at-home mom and loving it, because it sounds like you have enjoyed the journey.
I really have. It hasn't always been easy. It's a challenge. And there's new challenges for each season of my kid's life, trying to balance working from home, but being able to do it so I can stay home with my kids. But it has been such a wonderful blessing.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to your book coming out. Thanks
Thank
again.
you so much. Thank you.
Erin is such a gem, and I'm so excited for you to read her book. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And I'm also on Spotify, YouTube, and music is by Ben Sound. Thanks for listening, and keep rising in your story.